While I'm a fan of Mario Kart, and was glad to finally have a new Mario Kart game alongside the Switch 2 at launch, it wasn't World that sold me on buying a Switch 2. The reason I bought a Switch 2 at launch was for the promise of Donkey Kong Bananza. Bananza was far and away the star of the Switch 2 Direct for me. I thought it looked exceptional from the first frame we laid eyes on, and my excitement only grew after it was confirmed that Bananza was being developed by the team behind Super Mario Odyssey. As 8 years on, Odyssey remains one of the Switch's greatest games, and one of my first recommendations for any new Switch owner. So I was confident going into Bananza that it would be no less than great, and may very well be the Switch 2's killer app. So let's answer the big question right off the bat. Is Donkey Kong Bananza the Switch 2's first must-play game? And the answer, at least for me, is a resounding yes. A new 3D Donkey Kong game has been a long time coming. While we've had plenty of excellent 2D Donkey Kong games, be it Rare's classic Donkey Kong Country trilogy for the SNES, or Retro's exceptional modern revival of the series with Donkey Kong Country Returns, and my personal favourite DK game, the incredible and brutally challenging Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, we've never had a truly great 3D Donkey Kong game. As a matter of fact, we've only ever had one 3D Donkey Kong game, the often forgotten Donkey Kong 64, which despite receiving positive reviews at launch, has in the years since experienced a mass critical re-evaluation, and while it has a few staunch defenders, many critics and gamers now consider Donkey Kong 64 to be one of Nintendo's biggest first-party blunders of the N64 era, due to DK64's wonky camera, endless backtracking, empty environments, dull minigames, and ridiculously bloated lineup of 3,821 collectibles that are a massive slog to gather. Hey, at least it gave us the DK rap, I guess. Thankfully, history has not repeated itself in this case, and with Donkey Kong Bananza, our favourite tie-wearing ape has finally gotten the 3D adventure he's long deserved. Donkey Kong Bananza is a perfectly balanced collectathon that's focused purely on ensuring you're having fun at every moment, as you smash your way through its creative and varied environments. With its immaculate controls, charming cast of characters, and a focus on environmental destruction, the likes of which we haven't seen since Red Faction Guerilla, Donkey Kong Bananza is one of the most joyous and unabashedly videogamey experiences of 2025, and yet another serious contender for Game of the Year. As I'm sure you'd guess, Donkey Kong Bananza isn't a particularly story-heavy game, but the basic pitch is that our primate protagonist has joined an expedition to Ingot Isle alongside a crew of monkey prospectors to hit the mines in search of the banana-shaped Banandium gems. But just as DK's getting to work, the president of the villainous Void Company, Void Kong, and his cronies, Poppy Kong and Grumpy Kong, arrive atop a city-sized machine, sucking up all the Banandium gems before slamming into Ingot Isle and sending the island, along with Donkey Kong, plummeting into a deeper layer of the planet. I guess Bananza's world is kinda like the Godzilla movies, having entire ecosystems living within the deeper layers of the earth. It's here on this subterranean layer that DK meets his companion for this adventure, an odd purple rock. Only this isn't any ordinary rock, as we quickly free the person trapped within it, who is none other than, drumroll please, a young Pauline, who we know as both the damsel in distress Jumpman is trying to rescue in the original Donkey Kong arcade game, and more importantly, as the resident singing mayor of New Donk City in Super Mario Odyssey, which ties directly into Bananza, as Pauline's arc here is all about her musical origins, as she discovers her voice and learns to embrace her love of singing. And no, saying that the odd rock is Pauline isn't a spoiler. Nintendo Nintendo revealed this themselves in Bananza's Direct. She's even on Bananza's cover and featured in the beautiful amiibo that launched alongside this game. I've massively scaled back on amiibo collecting in recent years, but this one is so nice that even I couldn't resist picking it up. Pauline and DK quickly realise they'll need to join forces if they want to make their way back to the surface world, after learning that the only way to get back up is to first go deeper down through the different layers of this world until they reach the centre of the planet, as it's said that if you make it to the centre, you'll find the Banandium root and will have any wish you want granted, which Pauline and DK can use to return home. Well, Pauline is concerned about using the wish to get home, while DK is, as ever, just concerned with securing more bananas. But Pauline and DK aren't the only ones aware of the rumours of what awaits at the centre of the planet. So are the members of the Void Company, who see this wish as a way to fulfil their insatiable greed. So DK and Pauline will also have to take down the leaders of Void Company if they want to secure their way home. It's a simple story, but it works for what Bananza is, and Nintendo knows where to focus their storytelling efforts, the fun new roster of villains, and the blossoming friendship between DK and Pauline, both of which are charmingly showcased throughout Bananza. But let's be honest, you're not playing a Donkey Kong game for the story. The reason you come to any Nintendo first-party game is for the gameplay, and as expected, this is where Bananza excels. Donkey Kong Bananza is focused first and foremost on fun, and as a result, it's the most purely joyful gameplay experience I've had in 2025. As you clamber up walls, roll down slopes, scurry across the undersides of scaffolding, and smash your way through Bananza's various stages, it's hard not to be filled with delight. From the moment you lay hands on the sticks, you can tell Bananza was made by the Odyssey team, because its visuals, collectathon gameplay loop, and overall vibe share many similarities with Odyssey. But while the aesthetics and design philosophy are similar, in terms of gameplay, Odyssey and Bananza couldn't be more different. While Odyssey is a game all about platforming through meticulously designed environments to gather hundreds upon hundreds of collectible moons, Bananza is a game all about creating your own pathways through its world. While there are platforming sections, platforming often takes a back seat in Bananza because you can just carve your own path through every map here by punching through the concrete, stone, dirt, and whatever else stages are composed of. Smashing is the core mechanic of Bananza, and that's reflected in its control scheme, with 3 of the 4 face buttons being dedicated to punching in different directions. Bananza has some of the most impressive environmental destruction I've seen in a video game in a very long time. You can destroy practically every element of an environment until it's left completely barren and flat, and this perfectly showcases the level design wizardry of Nintendo. You can obliterate everything in these stages, but you'll still never end up trapped and unable to progress. Though at times, Bananza's camera can get a bit wonky as it tries to keep up with the chaos. I cannot imagine what a nightmare it must have been to QA test Bananza and ensure players weren't able to break this game no matter how they went about destroying its environments. But DK can do more than just smash up the environments. He can also rip out chunks of them to use as a weapon to hit spiky enemies he can't punch with his bare fists, or clear thorny vines that are blocking a pathway. You can also use that same chunk of ground to navigate the environment by riding around on top of it, treating it like a giant spinning top to ride over a pool of lava. Or use it for a chunk jump, where you jump, then springboard off a carried chunk of terrain in midair to double your jump height. You can even create bridges by ripping out wads of mud or clay and throwing them at solid surfaces they'll stick to, allowing you to lightly sequence break and get to things in ways Bananza clearly doesn't intend for you to. This freedom to solve problems in a myriad of ways, combined with how Bananza allows you to freely scale practically any surface in its environments, lends Bananza a distinct hint of Breath of the Wild. There's one puzzle in Bananza where there's a Banandium gem in a little cavern hovering above a pool of water. The way you're supposed to solve this puzzle is by using a contraption to raise the water level so you can just swim up to the gem and grab it. But before ever finding the mechanism to raise the water, I just flung mud at the walls of the cavern to build a makeshift staircase leading up to the Banandium gem. With its flexibility in problem solving, freedom of movement, massive scale environmental destruction, and collectathon gameplay loop, Bananza is equal parts Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, and Red Faction. And yes, this combination of gameplay concepts leads to a sandbox that is every bit as satisfying to toy around in as it sounds. This is such a fun direction for Nintendo to take the Donkey Kong series in, and it's awesome seeing an idea from Nintendo that wouldn't have been possible on the more technically restrained hardware of the original Switch. You know, a game with this level of environmental destruction, with particles flying everywhere and glass shattering into a million little pieces, would have run at about 5 frames per second on the Switch. Of course, Bananza has its roots in 3D platforming, so you can still expect plenty of platforming challenges, some light puzzle solving, and we all know it wouldn't be a Donkey Kong game without a little minecart action. Donkey Kong Bananza is filled with clever little creative ideas for challenges, as you carve a tunnel through a stone wall to safely guide little critters in need of help around a pool of lava, dig your way under laser grids, throw seeds that grow into vines that form bridges, and smash blue blocks that then fill in a parallel pink box with the sections you've smashed out, allowing you to create ramps and stairways. Bananza is a masterclass in directing the player and keeping them engaged without cluttering your screen with hideous UI elements. No matter where you go, Bananza is constantly putting new points of interest in your periphery. This is the kind of game where I'd tell myself, I'm just gonna quickly grab that fossil over there before closing the game for the night, then end up playing for another 2 hours, because every time I picked something up, I'd spot something else to do, and think, I should probably just grab that now so I don't forget about it. This is masterful game design from Nintendo that keeps you constantly moving through Bananza's world without feeling like it's holding your hand too much. Like Mario in his 3D adventures, Donkey Kong's moveset is ridiculously fun to utilise and master in Bananza. As I punched, rolled, and dove through environments, I was constantly reminded that almost nobody can make a 3D platformer feel as good as Nintendo. Honestly, I think Team Asobi is literally the only studio in the world that can make a 3D platformer to rival Nintendo's. Shout out to Astrobot. Man, what an absolute gem of a game. And in the same way you can exploit abilities like Mario's triple jump backflips and Astrobot's boosters combined with a spin to get to new places, you can do the same with Donkey Kong's abilities, doing things like rolling down a slope to build up momentum, jumping, then going into another roll in midair to extend your leap and make a jump you normally shouldn't be able to. Like Odyssey, and most 3D platformers for that matter, Donkey Kong Bananza is a game all about collecting. Though unlike most platformers, where the collectibles are just floating in the air waiting to be grabbed, Bananzas are a little more hidden, as you normally have to mine your way to them, as they're buried below ground and in the middle of massive rock structures. Obviously, Nintendo isn't going to have players blindly smashing through environments with no direction in hopes of finding something. So in Bananza, Donkey Kong has an ability to help him seek out collectibles. When you tap on the right bumper, DK will slap the ground, sending out a pulse wave that scans the environment and highlights collectibles, so you know what you're mining towards. Now, does this mean I was mashing the R button and endlessly slapping the ground like a psychopath as I was exploring? Absolutely, but it was a worthy trade-off to ensure I wasn't missing anything. And DK's hand slap serves a couple of other purposes as well. It can activate devices in the environment and will pull nearby gold to him, so you're not running in circles grabbing every piece of gold individually. Of course, we know DK isn't alone on this journey, as he's accompanied by Pauline. And Pauline isn't just along for the ride, she plays an integral role in gameplay. Not only can her singing break seals in the environment, opening up barrels that can blast you to new locations, and unlocking doors to various challenge rooms, but it also ties into what is arguably the most interesting new mechanic Bananza brings to the table. DK's Bananza transformations, from which the game draws its name. As Pauline and Donkey Kong make their way through the different layers of the planet, they'll encounter the legendary Elder Animals, giant, godlike creatures who will present the duo with trials that, if completed, will grant DK their power, allowing him to transform into a new form based on that animal, with these transformations being activated when DK and Pauline unite in song, with Pauline singing and DK drumming a beat on his chest, with the Bananza transformations allowing DK to interact with the world in new ways. All up, Donkey Kong has 5 Bananza transformations, but to avoid getting too spoilery, I'll only talk about the first 2 of them. His ultra-powerful Kong Bananza transformation, and his speedy Zebra Bananza transformation. In his Kong Bananza form, DK is transformed into a giant fire-coated ape, and is made infinitely stronger, allowing him to make short work of most enemies and smash through tougher materials like concrete that are normally unbreakable. While in his Zebra form, DK can sprint at breakneck speeds, allowing him to run along paper-thin ice platforms quicker than they can collapse below him. The designs for these Bananza forms are absolutely nuts, and a little cursed looking if we're being honest, but I grew to appreciate just how peculiar these forms look, especially the final transformation, which is an utterly insane choice on Nintendo's part. Something that differentiates Bananza from other 3D platformers is that it's a little more combat heavy, which makes sense. DK is a bit of a meathead who slaps and punches his way through his problems, and while the combat is simple, Bananza offers just enough enemy variety to give fights some texture and keep them engaging throughout, with some enemies requiring you to smash through their armoured exterior with a hunk of rock you've torn from the ground, while others are only susceptible to damage in the sunlight or shadows, so you're having to think about your positioning and lure them into place before attacking. Any collectathon worth its salt offers a variety of collectibles to find and ample rewards for doing so, and that's certainly true of Bananza. You'll be mining for fossils and gold that can be spent in shops to unlock new looks for DK and Pauline, some of which are purely cosmetic, like the fur dyes that change the colour of DK. And you can get as ridiculous as you like with these. You can play through Bananza with DK's fur being red, blue, green, a gradient of bright neon colours, even metallic. While the different pants and tie options offer some unique gameplay benefits, like the treasure tie increasing your chances of finding treasure chests while digging, or the swimming breeches bolstering your swim speed. There's even a tie that lets DK eat any material he rips out of the environment to restore health. But it's not just DK you can purchase new looks for. You can buy Pauline some new digs too, with Pauline's different outfits extending the duration of DK's various Bananza transformations. Side note, about the fur colours in the shops. Americans, you spell the word colour wrong. What's your problem with the letter U? As an Australian, I can tell you that the rest of the world is sick of your nonsense. Sort it out. Of course, the most important thing to Donkey Kong is the banana-shaped minerals Bananza revolves around, Banandium gems, and collecting these will reward DK with skill points that can be used to unlock new skills and improve his stats, improving DK's strength and health, shortening the time his transformations take, attracting objects from further away, and increasing the radius of the area scanned by the sonar burst that's sent out when you slap the ground, which was the first thing I worked on maxing out, so I didn't miss any hidden fossils and gems. There are also unique branches in the skill tree for each of DK's 5 Bananza forms, which offer upgrades like strengthening the Kong Bananza form's charge punch to prevent your charge from being interrupted if you're hit while it's charging, as well as new skills like the ability to send out a shockwave attack at enemies when you suddenly brake while sprinting at full speed in the Zebra Bananza form. God damn, DK must have diamond teeth and an iron stomach, because the dude is munching on these gems as if they're just normal bananas. Bananza's world is packed with fun activities to unlock more Banandium gems, ranging from platforming challenges, to combat challenge rooms, to little environmental puzzles, like helping a puzzle piece shaped block find its missing pieces to become a complete rectangle again, all of which helps break up the regular flow of gameplay. One minute you're just smashing around hunting down fossils, the next you're in a challenge room, riding an enemy like a circus ball across a spike-covered room, while avoiding hazards and trying not to fall off of narrow runways as if you're playing Super Monkey Ball, all in the name of getting those precious Banandium gems. Though don't worry, Nintendo didn't go overboard with collectibles in Bananza like they did in DK's last 3D outing. In fact, I'd say they towed the line perfectly, including just the right amount of goodies to find. By the time I wrapped up Bananza, the Switch 2 had me at 35 hours of playtime, and I had about 85 to 90% of the collectibles in each layer. But your playtime will vary massively depending on how thoroughly you choose to play Bananza. You could definitely finish Bananza at around the 20-hour mark if you aren't as pedantic about collecting. But I think collecting is the fun of these games, so I do think you should take your time to explore each layer and not rush the experience. The one nitpick I have with Bananza's collectibles is that even if you get every Banandium gem in the world, you still won't have enough skill points to fully max out the skill tree. Nintendo does implement a way to fix this by allowing you to buy the additional gems required from vendors, but I feel like if you put in the work to collect everything in a game, you should be able to max out the skill tree organically. This is just a pet peeve of mine. Donkey Kong Bananza's environments showcase an enormous amount of variety, as each new layer of the planet that you reach has its own distinct biome that provides a different vibe from any other stage in Bananza. You truly never know where you'll arrive next, which makes every new transition to a lower level of the planet exciting. Maybe you end up in a sprawling forest, or an icy tundra, or a tropical archipelago filled with gorgeous beaches. Naturally, the deeper into the planet you get, the harsher the environments become, and the stronger the terrain you'll encounter is. A wonderful degree of environmental variety is something that Nintendo rarely fails to provide, but this was a major strength of Odyssey in particular, so it makes sense that Bananza was developed by the same team. There's such variety and spectacle to Bananza's environments, and they just get more and more ridiculous and impressive the closer you get to the planet's core. The final portion of Bananza is absolutely wild, and it's a blast to play through, as these final areas are masterfully designed to force you to use every skill you've unlocked across your journey. I thought Bananza was about to end on 3 separate occasions, but it just kept going, continuing to escalate while throwing in plenty of fun surprises. Bananza truly has one of the most impressive and memorable conclusions to a game in 2025, and arguably one of the best to ever grace a 3D platformer. In traditional Nintendo fashion, getting through the core game is a pretty breezy experience. The challenge comes when you attempt to 100% Bananza, with Bananza offering plenty of extra challenging and very well designed post-game content to put your platforming chops to the test in. Though even then, Bananza isn't going to push your gaming skills to the absolute limit like Tropical Freeze did. There are no lives in Bananza, so the only consequence for dying is losing a little bit of gold, and even then, you can go back to where you died and reclaim some of your lost gold. Pound for pound, Bananza is the easiest mainline Donkey Kong game front to back, but that's not a bad thing. I like a challenging game. I mean, of course I do. I'm a huge FromSoft dork. But not everything needs to be hyper punishing, and sometimes it's nice to play a more laid back experience. With that said, there was one area of Bananza where I was disappointed by its lack of challenge, and that's its boss fights. Bananza's boss fights can be fun, even if they're very traditional, straightforward platforming bosses. But the problem is, because they're so easy, it often feels like the boss fights are over before they've even truly begun. No hyperbole, I finished many of the boss fights in Bananza in under 45 seconds, and because I was just steamrolling through them, I was missing out on that feeling of overcoming the bosses. Donkey Kong Bananza is a good looking game. The character models in particular look great. This is certainly the most detailed Donkey Kong model we've ever seen, and the environments are often striking thanks to the vibrant colour palette showcased throughout Bananza, which gives Bananza's locales a distinct vibe, despite largely being staple environments we've seen in hundreds of platformers before. But Bananza certainly isn't jaw-droppingly beautiful. It's not as pretty as Mario Kart World, and it's honestly not that much better looking than many of Nintendo's first-party offerings for the original Switch. However, visual fidelity wasn't Nintendo's priority when utilising the Switch 2's additional power here. The extra horsepower was used for the wanton destruction you can cause in Bananza's environments, and in this regard, Bananza is quite technically impressive, especially for a game on the Switch 2, a handheld device that is significantly less powerful than other consoles on the market. And Bananza usually runs very well and maintains a solid 60 FPS frame rate, no matter how much chaos is occurring on screen, though I did notice some substantial frame drops in some of the more open environments. With Pauline's primary role in the story being her singing, music naturally plays a huge role in Bananza, and the Donkey Kong series has long been known for its excellent soundtracks, dating back to David Wise's phenomenal scores for the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy, which are undoubtedly some of the strongest soundtracks of that entire console generation, with many gamers arguing that Donkey Kong Country 2 may in fact have the single best soundtrack in the SNES library. So I'm sure it's not too surprising to hear that Donkey Kong Bananza's soundtrack is very good. It certainly doesn't hold a candle to the best of the franchise, with Donkey Kong Country 2 and Tropical Freeze being in a league of their own. But how could it, when we've been long spoiled by exceptional soundtracks in this series? And Bananza's soundtrack is still more than competent, and fits the vibe of its world perfectly. Bananza's soundtrack certainly has its moments. It truly starts to kick off in the tail end of the game, before fully crescendoing in the final area. When you're barreling through these crazy environments, while the guitars are absolutely shredding, it certainly does get you pumped up. Bananza also occasionally throws in some classic DK tunes, and they're used to excellent effect. But it's also not lost on me that these classic themes completely outshine the new music, which highlights the fact that Bananza's soundtrack largely pales in comparison to the soundtracks of the Donkey Kong Country games, as when one of these songs kicked in, it had caused me to suddenly perk up and start paying attention to the soundtrack, when the rest of the music was largely fading into the background for me. With Donkey Kong Bananza, the Switch 2 has received its first must-play game. Donkey Kong Bananza is a masterclass in game design with meticulously crafted levels that simultaneously guide you effortlessly while also allowing you to freely carve your own path through them. And the immaculate feel of smashing your way through its environments allows Bananza to provide the most pure, uninhibited fun experience I've had with a video game in 2025. Recapturing many of the same feelings I experienced playing Astrobot last year. It's always delightful to play a game that prioritises moment-to-moment fun in gameplay over everything else. Bananza is one of the most rewarding collectathons of this decade, and my new favourite Donkey Kong game. Fuck, I'm dreading ordering my Game of the Year list for 2025. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to like, subscribe, or leave a comment. You can find countless other videos on my channel, including my previous video where I spent over an hour gushing about Stranding 2. And be sure to stay tuned for my upcoming reviews of Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, Demon Slayer The Hinokami Chronicles 2, and Mafia The Old Country. Till next time, be well guys.